Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. I'm Mike Drodas, Bible teacher and preacher, and you've tuned into my YouTube channel, Solving the Prophetic Puzzle. Today I want to explain to you the mystery of Daniel's 70th week and how it is related to the 7-year tribulation period. I believe this is foundational to understanding anything about end times. You must understand Daniel, and you must understand Daniel's 70th week and how it relates to the 7-year tribulation period. God set up a system for the Jewish people to follow when it came to marking time. God created time. God is above time. God knows the beginning from the end. But he placed man in this period that we call time. Time has a start. Time has an end. I'm not talking about eternity here. I'm talking about the time that we have here on this earth. Now the day begins at sunset with the Jewish people. The day begins at sunset and goes to the next sunset. There are 7 days in a week for the Jewish people, the way God instituted this plan for them. On the 7th day, there was no work. No work was to be done. It was called the Shabbat. For us, that would begin on Friday evening at sunset. If just to give you a reference on how it works, the Shabbat would begin, the Sabbath would begin Friday evening, sunset. The Sabbath is Saturday, and then Sunday for us, Sunday for them would be the beginning of the new week. They were to work the land. They were to work the land for 6 years. But on the 7th year, they were to let it rest. Going back to the week, they were to work 6 days during the week, but on the Sabbath, they were supposed to rest. They were to work the land for 6 years, but on the 7th year, they were to let it rest. This is called a Shemitah cycle. A Shemitah cycle. You let the land rest on the 7th year. During the Shemitah cycle, you also release the debts of all people. And you release anyone on the Shemitah year. You release anyone who became enslaved because of their debts to you. You release the enslaved people. You release the captives. You set them free. You let the land rest. You release the debts. You release the people. After the 7 Shemitah cycles, on the 50th year, there would be a jubilee. This is what God intended. It was how God wanted them, the Jews, to operate. It was different from the world system. It was different from everyone else in the world. And that's because God wanted it to be that way. The Jewish people were to be examples to the rest of the world. Yet they never did this. They never followed God's rule for the Shemitah cycle and for the Shemitah year. They did not obey it. They did not fulfill the Shemitah cycle. It took faith. It took faith to not work the land in the 7th year and to let it rest. They probably thought, how are we going to live? How are we going to eat? How are we going to make it? How can I release debts from people who owe me money? How can I do that? How can I release these people who have been indebted to me and now have been enslaved to me? How can I set them free? It doesn't make sense. It's not working mentally in my mind. I can't do that. God's asking too much. I don't have enough faith to do it, and they refuse to obey God. Year after year, they refused to obey the Shemitah cycle. God sent prophets to warn them. They did not listen. We're talking hundreds of years. Men would be sent by God to tell Israel, to tell Jerusalem, to tell Judah not to disobey God, but to go ahead and accept the Shemitah cycle, let the land rest, release the captives, but they refused. In Zechariah chapter 7, we read, beginning in verse 8, Zechariah is recounting the history to the Jewish people. And he says, Then the word of the Lord came to Zechariah, saying, Thus says the Lord of hosts, execute true judgment, true justice, show mercy and compassion, everyone to his brother. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless, the alien or the poor. Let none of you plan evil in his heart against his brother. But they refused to heed. They shrugged their shoulders and stopped their ears so they could not hear. Yes, they made their hearts like flint, refusing to hear the law and the words which the Lord of hosts had sent by his Spirit through the former prophets. Thus great wrath came from the Lord. Therefore it happened that just as he proclaimed, and they would not hear, so they called out, and I would not listen. Listen, says the Lord of hosts. God implored the Jewish nation to obey, but they refused. And eventually, the Babylonians came, and they captured the city. They captured Jerusalem. They captured the entire nation. They surrounded Jerusalem. They besieged that city. They destroyed that city. They destroyed the temple. They ransacked the temple. They took all the gold and all the precious articles out of that temple. Then they crumbled that temple down to the ground. They took the king, Zedekiah. They allowed Zedekiah to watch his children be shackled and chained and taken off to Babylon. Then they gouged Zedekiah's eyes out and blinded him. They took the people, the good people of the land, the smart people. They took them away. They exported them back to Babylon. And then the rest of the people they scattered throughout the world. They destroyed that nation. They destroyed the temple. They took all the gold. They took all the silver. They took the smartest people back to Babylon. That's how Daniel ended up back at Babylon. Daniel then served the Babylonians and then the Medes and then the Persians. Daniel served these kings for 60 years. The nation of Israel was in captivity in Babylon for 70 years. Until a man named King Cyrus allowed them to go back and rebuild the temple. Cyrus came to power, and King Cyrus allowed the Jewish people to go back to the land, and he encouraged them to rebuild their temple, and he even helped finance the rebuilding of their temple. They were in captivity for 70 years. We read that that's the exact time, the exact amount of Shemitah years that Israel never adhered to. The land got its rest for 70 years. And then the Jews were allowed to go back to the land and begin to rebuild the temple. That's what was going on. Now Daniel, in Daniel chapter 9, he's in captivity, but it's almost to the end of this time frame. Cyrus is almost allowing them to go back, and Daniel begins to pray, and he wants to know about his nation, and he wants to know what's going to happen to his people. So turn to Daniel chapter 9. This is very important. Daniel chapter 9. Now, verse 20. Now while I was speaking, praying, and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplications before the Lord my God, for the holy mountain of my God, yes, while I was speaking in prayer, the man Gabriel, who I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, reached me about the time of the evening offering. And he informed me, and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give you skill to understand. At the beginning of your supplication, the command went out, and I have come to tell you, for you are greatly beloved, therefore consider the matter and understand the vision. Gabriel has been sent by God to tell Daniel exactly what's going to happen to the future of his nation and the future of his people. So here we go. Daniel's 70th week. Verse 24. 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city to finish the transgressions, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for the iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up visions and prophecies, and to anoint the most holy. Gabriel said, you have 70 weeks. 1 week is 7 years. So you have 490 years are allotted to your people to do all that he just mentioned in verse 24. Verse 25, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So he's saying there will be 69 weeks from the point of time when Cyrus allows the nation of Israel to go back to their land and rebuild their temple. There will be 7 weeks, which is 49 years, and 62 weeks, which is 434 years, which is 69 weeks, or 483 years. 69 weeks, 483 years. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times. Now, look at this. And after 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself and the people, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So what Gabriel is saying is, after 69 weeks, 7 weeks plus 62 weeks, 483 years, there will be somebody called the Messiah. And he will be cut off, not for himself. Did you know that to the exact date of 483 years later, there was Jesus Christ, the Messiah, who came to this earth? And he was crucified somewhere around 28 AD. 483 years later from this proclamation that Gabriel gave Daniel. And Jesus Christ was the Son of God. He did not die for himself. He died for others. He died for the world. He was sinless and spotless, yet he was nailed to a cross, and he bore the sin of the whole world upon himself on that cross. He was cut off after 483 years. And the prince of the people who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Who crucified Jesus? The Romans. There will be a prince that will come from the people that destroyed Jesus and crucified him, and he shall come. Someone from the Roman Empire will come. In verse 27, then he, who is the he? The prince who is to come, he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. Here is Daniel's 70th week, right here. We've already seen 69 weeks. It's already been fulfilled. At the point that Jesus Christ was cut off, the time for the Jews stopped. And we are now in the time frame that we refer to as the times of the Gentiles. There is 1 week left, 1 7-year period left, the 70th week of Daniel. And verse 27 tells you exactly when it starts. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. 1 week, 7 years. This is Daniel's 70th week. This is what people are always talking about. This is what many Christians refer to as the 7-year tribulation period. I don't really like that, because nowhere in the Bible does it say that this period is a 7-year tribulation period. Jesus did refer to the last 3.5 years as a time of great tribulation, but he never said anything about a 7-year tribulation period. So when does it start? When does this last week start? When does Daniel's 70th week start? Now, many people have said it's got to start at a Shemitah year, or a new Shemitah cycle, because Daniel was talking to Gabriel, and Daniel understood Shemitah cycles. That's the whole reason why they were in captivity in the first place. And Gabriel's explaining 77s are 70 Shemitah cycles, and then there's 1 week left. Yes, there's 1 week left, but it's separated from all the other weeks. So I'm thinking that it doesn't have to be on a Shemitah cycle. I would like it to be on a Shemitah cycle. I think that's really cool. And there is a new Shemitah cycle occurring at September 27th, 2022. From where I am at doing this video now, that's in a couple of weeks, or about 10 days now. That's not too far ahead. That's just around the corner. And that's really cool, and I like that. But we are looking at the Antichrist here. We are looking at the man of sin, the man of perdition. And I don't really think that he cares necessarily about starting his 7-year covenant with many on a Shemitah year. I don't really think I think after he gets involved and becomes this supreme leader, this guy who signs a covenant with the many, I think at that point in time that they'll just go ahead and have a new Shemitah cycle. They'll start it when he declares the covenant with the many. So I'm not going to get hung up on worrying about a Shemitah cycle as the exact window of opportunity where the man of sin has to come in and confirm a covenant with the many. I like it though. I think it's cool. But it does not say that the 70th week begins at a Shemitah cycle. It says the 70th week begins when he, who is the he? The prince who is to come, back in verse 26, or the man of sin, or the son of perdition, or the Antichrist. When you have time, if you have time to study this out, look back at Daniel chapter 8, verses 23 through 26. I think you'll find some good reading there. It talks about this man, this cunning man of intrigue, who promotes prosperity during his time. This guy is going to confirm a covenant. A covenant is also translated treaty. He is going to confirm, or he's going to ratify a treaty for 7 years. That's when it starts. That's when Daniel's 70th week starts. When the covenant or the treaty with many is ratified for 7 years. Its middle is 3.5 years from that point. The end is 3.5 years from the middle. What is the treaty? What is the treaty, Brother Mike? I don't know. I really don't know. But I got a few ideas. And I'll start with the most absurd idea first, and then I'll go to the one that I really think it probably is. The first idea is maybe this man of sin, this Antichrist, this prince of the people, maybe he will sign a treaty with the aliens. There's such a big push right now for UFOs and life out there, and we've been seeded from our galactic friends out in some system, and they're coming back to help us all rise to a new level of consciousness and come together in unity and reach for the stars. Maybe the man of sin is going to sign a treaty with them. Or maybe the man, told you that was absurd. It's just the way I think sometimes, sorry. Or maybe the man of sin, this Antichrist, will sign a treaty with the world, ratifying the Save the Climate agenda. You know what I'm talking about. Maybe that's it. Maybe he's going to sign a treaty pledging allegiance to saving the world. The third one, the one that probably it is, the man of sin, the Antichrist, he will sign a treaty with nations who either have just attacked Israel or who want to attack Israel. And it will be a peace treaty. He will look like he is a man of peace. He will look like he is the Savior of the world. He will look like he is a friend of Israel. He will encourage Israel to start rebuilding the temple. He will encourage Israel. He will place them into a favored nation status as he becomes this Prince of Peace. Remember, he's the Antichrist, so he's going to try to look and act like Jesus Christ. For a while, anyway. In the middle of Daniel's 70th week, he goes into the rebuilt temple. Yeah, the temple has to be rebuilt. And he does something interesting. Turn to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. Now, brethren, concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering together with him, we ask you not to be soon shaken in mind or trouble, either by spirit or by word or by letter, as if it was from us, as though the day of Christ had come. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. People get alarmed when you read this. They say, wait a minute, you mean we have to be here until the 3.5 year midpoint when the Antichrist goes into the temple and proclaims himself God? No. That's not what it says. You have to read it. Read it carefully. No, the following away comes first and the Antichrist is revealed. All that other stuff describes what he will do. But the great falling away will come first, and the Antichrist, this man of sin, this man of peace, this great guy who's going to sign a peace treaty with the nations and become the friend of Israel, this guy will be revealed. Now go to Matthew chapter 24. Whoa, this is a long lesson today. I'm sorry for taking up so much time. But understanding this is important. Because if you understand Daniel's 70th week and the tribulation period and all of that, then you will know exactly where we're at prophetically as we're drawing closer and closer to the rapture. Matthew chapter 24, verse 15. Jesus talked about this. Now, therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever reads this, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judah flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant, to those who are nursing babies in those days. And pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be great tribulation, such as not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Who is Jesus talking to? He's talking to the Jews who live in Judea. He's saying that when you see the man of sin go into the rebuilt temple and proclaim himself God, get out, flee. Notice that he then said that after that point, it's the point of great tribulation. This is the only place where we see the word tribulation accounted towards Daniel's 70th week. And it's talking about the last 3.5 years. A time of great tribulation. Not a 7-year tribulation. I believe that in the beginning of the 7-year period, Daniel's 70th week, it will be a time of peace and security. People will be trying to work together. But then at the midpoint, when the Antichrist goes into the new temple, everything changes at that point. Everything changes. So what am I saying? Here it is, summed up in a few bullet points. There will come a point in the future when the Antichrist confirms a covenant with the many for a 7-year time frame. That begins Daniel's 70th week. The day that happens, you can count 3.5 years or 42 months. It's the same thing to the midpoint. The midpoint. At the midpoint, we read in Revelation chapter 13, we read exactly what happens at the midpoint. Revelation 13, verse 14. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by these great signs which was granted to him to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image of the beast, who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, and that no one may buy or sell except he who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here's wisdom. Let him have he who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for as the number of a man, his number is 666. At the 3.5-year point, during Daniel's 70th week, the Antichrist goes into the rebuilt temple. He goes into the Holy of Holies. He sets up an image, which is a desolation. And he causes all people to worship the image. To worship the image. He proclaims himself God. He breaks the first and second commandments. There is only one God, and he proclaims himself to be God, and then he has people bow down to an image. He proclaims himself God. He causes everyone to receive a mark in their hand. And he causes people to worship him and accept his mark. At that point, that time frame, that we see that Jesus called that point the time of great tribulation. I feel that will be the time when the trumpet and bowl judgments are poured out upon the beast, upon his system, upon the false prophet, upon those who receive the mark of the beast, upon the unbeliever and the unrepentant. And we won't be here. We will be gone. Because the blessed hope happens most certainly before the midpoint, probably years before that. We will not be here. The rapture is the blessed hope. The rapture is the great evacuation plan. I know this was a little longer today. Thanks for watching. Thank you for watching. I pray that you understand a little bit better more about Daniel's 70th week. So until next time, as I always say, keep looking up. Jesus Christ is coming soon. God bless you.